in this section, in the center section, which is this one here, you need to put in a full saturation of color. Now with the violets and the blues, you're going to have to do this a little lighter because they tend to get very, very dark and heavy if you use the color at full saturation. So in this case, now you're going to label all of this. So this is going to be Winsor, Newton, Lemon. And you want to do this on the inside of the color wheel. Lemon Yellow. This will be Winsor, Newton, Cad Yellow Light. This will be Scarlett Lake. This will be Permanent Rose. This will be Ultramarine Blue. And this will be Prussian Blue. Again, this is all on your assignment sheet, so you have a reference to work from. Now, the thing about this is that you're going to have to lighten up all these lines so that they don't dominate the color wheel. And now you're ready to mix your colors. Remember last week when I told you that you should save the colors that you used for your library of your sample sheet? Well, what you want to do now, you can see how some of these colors have dried and you have this ring of color around each color. So what you want to do is you want to add water to bring it up to the level that it was before. You will have what you need for this assignment and for the graded tone assignment, which we will be doing next week. So what we're going to do now is we are going to mix up these colors so that they're nicely blended again. All right, so we'll mix this up and we should have the same concentration that we had before. Clean our brush, mix the next one. And as you can see, we're back in business. So I'm going to start with the yellow. In order to paint this, you're going to have to alternate because when something is wet, you can't put something else next to it that's wet because they'll start to bleed into one another. But what you can do here is you can move this artwork around so that you can get to things quite easily. So again, we keep our table tilted. I'm going to start with the lemon yellow, and then I'm going to switch over to another color so that the lemon yellow can dry before I put on the cadmium yellow that's next to it. Now, these colors probably you'll have to do more than one layer. But again, this is the same technique that you use for your flat wash. Keep a puddle down at the bottom edge. Try to be as tidy as possible. Always work with the tip of the brush towards the border of the shape and pick up any puddle that you have. Notice that I changed the position of my brush from more like this to where I was painting with the side to more vertically so that I'm just catching the tip on the surface. All right, so there is our first shape. I accidentally painted the shaded area, but that will be all right because we're going to add other colors to it. All right, so while this is drying, I'm going to go to Scarlett Lake. All right, and this is my Scarlett Lake, and I am going to fill in this color. And just like we did when we did the swatch library, you probably will have to paint this a couple of times to bring the saturation up to where it needs to be. Finish off these center color wheel colors. Say don't go back into it unless it's wet, and as soon as you can see it starts to dry, it's too late. Don't touch it, leave it alone. We got this Scarlett Lake. Now I can actually do ultramarine blue because I happen to have it here on my palette, and I'm going to paint that shape in. You can see I have this little puddle down at the bottom, and this will eventually be picked up. You should be able to do most of this dry. But again, if you feel better working wet and dampening the paper, go ahead and do so. Now, the next thing you have to do is you have to mix your colors. So because we have the yellows and the reds here, I don't have all the blues mixed here, but we can use this to create our secondary colors and our tertiary colors. At this point, I'm bringing in another palette because we want to make sure we still keep these because we're going to need them, as I said, for other things. But you also have to mix some colors here. You're going to need an orange, you're going to need a yellow orange, and you're going to need a red orange. And you're going to have to mix these very carefully and test them to make sure that the balance is correct. Because it's very easy to make that yellow orange too orange, and then it's too far away from the yellow. You can see how close these are in terms of color. So the thing to do here is to have a separate palette that you can use to mix these colors. In this case, we're going to be using cadmium yellow. Before we do this, is mix up a little bit more cadmium yellow from my palette library. Make sure you have enough color. And I want to test it for saturation before I do anything else. And actually you can test it right on your color wheel, not on the wheel itself, but off to the side to see how dark it is. And of course you can add more than one layer to this. So I'm going to fill in cadmium yellow because now cadmium lemon is dry. And we're going to use the cadmium yellow to mix with the Scarlett Lake because both of those primaries have an orange bias. So you're only using yellow and a red to create your orange. This is very important when you start to mix these colors. Alright, so I'm going to take some of this yellow, which is the cadmium yellow, and I'm going to put it into another palette. This is going to be my secondary and tertiary palette. Make sure you have enough so that you don't have to remix. And now I'm going to take some of the Scarlett Lake. And I'm going to say, is that orange? Well, we're not sure. It looks kind of yellow. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some of this in another tray. And we're going to put some of this in another tray. And it looks to me like we need more paint. Because this is not going to be enough to fill in your shape, especially if you have to do more than one layer. Okay, clean the brush again because we need to keep our resource clean. Try not to get into the orange. All right. How do we like that? Do we like that? Let's test. Remember, you're going to put multiple layers down. You're not going to be able to do this in one shot. All right, let's add more yellow to this baby over here. Mix it up. See how we like that. We could probably even go a little bit more yellow, in which case you can even take some from your main palette. And get it quite yellow. We're going to assume that's a true orange for ourselves. So rather than use up all of my diluted yellow, we're going to take it from our main library. And we're going to do the same thing with the Scarlett Lake, and we're going to add it to this orange here. And you can see we can go quite a ways yet. Always clean your brush when you go into a color. Now, how does that look with the Scarlett Lake? So clean this, and we'll go into our Scarlett Lake. Okay, that looks pretty good. We could probably go a little redder on this if we wanted to, but I think this is a pretty good relationship. So now you have your orange, you have your red orange, and you have your yellow orange. So we're going to put these somewhere safe, and the first one we're going to do is we'll do the red orange, because the red Scarlett Lake is dry. Load our brush, and now we've got an even bigger area that we have to paint. So make sure you have a good enough puddle in here that you can work this paint without it getting dry and blotchy on you, because you can always pick it up. Turn your paper if you need to get to the edge. Cleaning my brush because I have a lot of paint in here and I don't need it all. And I'm not cleaning it with water. All I'm doing is drying it off. Because as soon as you put water into this brush, it's going to dilute your paint. And then you're going to get that cauliflowering. So there's your first, this is your red orange. Now we can't do the orange because this is wet, so we can't touch it. But this is dry enough now that we can do the yellow orange. So make sure you have a clean brush and then wipe it off because you want to get the water out of it so you don't dilute this color. Mix it up and then lay it on there. Making sure you have your, pull your color away. I'm going to take some of that paint out of the brush. This is very wet. And we weren't getting a nice point on the brush. And now we're in much better shape. So there's your yellow orange.